Hi, everybody. This is Holly from Holly's Pandorium. And I have with me today someone that I haven't interviewed before. And this is someone that I know some different events that I've been to in the Portland area. Um, he goes by a few different names. I've known him as Raven, and he has a really cool story about how he got that name that I'm hoping he'll share with us. And let me see if I can say this right. Hraefnar, did I do okay?
Hraefnar. But
Okay.
yeah, close enough.
Okay. Okay. So we're going to talk about a few things today. So I've asked him to share one or more of his paranormal stories that he has. And then he's got some really cool things that he does. He makes Viking shamanic drinking horns, and they are lovely. There's one he's showing on the screen right now. For people listening, they're made very specially handmade by him, and they're amazing. So I'm going to let you get started. So go ahead and please start with your stories about the paranormal, and then let's talk about what you do every day.
Actually, one really important paranormal story that I would really like to tell is it's not super complicated. It's not like super extreme, but
Mhm.
as a drinking horn maker, I am a shaman because, in my beliefs, anyways, the true craft of making drinking horns is by nature shamanic, and that is because I'm communing with the spirit of the animal as I work on it.
Okay.
Um, but that means that there are certain things that can happen, right? So, um, because I made this drinking horn for somebody some years ago, and because of the shamanic nature of the craft, I'm connected to the spirit of the horn. And after I had shipped it out to them, I had this nightmare. I had this nightmare where the horn was screaming and it
Wow.
was calling out to me. And I saw that it was being tossed around and abused, and it was being thrown through a basketball hoop. And afterwards, I reached out to the person that I'd sold it to, and they said, "I'm very sorry, but yeah, I gave it to somebody, and I caught him tossing it around."
Oh,
And yeah, so um, the horn had actually reached out to me when it was being abused.
that's
And
incredible.
yeah, um, and I think that probably unnerved them a little bit. I don't think that they were expecting that at all, but um, the abuse stopped because I haven't had any dreams since then from that drinking horn. So as far as I can tell, as far as I can feel, I think that stopped them abusing the horn when they realized, oh shit, drinking horn maker actually knows. Like, yeah, I know. Um, so that's one supernatural, that's one paranormal experience that I've had with drinking horns. Um, I've had a lot of paranormal experiences. I've dealt with mimics before. Um,
Can you
I
explain what that is for people that are listening and watching that haven't heard that term before?
so a mimic is a type of entity that they do tend to occur more in wooded or mountainous areas, but not strictly in those areas. But a mimic is an entity that will often mimic the sound of somebody's voice in order to, again, presumably in order to lure you into a space. And it can be that, for instance, you can be in your room in your house, and then you can hear something that sounds like somebody you know,
Hmm.
but the house is empty. So that's a mimic. They can be more extreme than that. There can be at times where they have like full manifestations where they're trying to imitate or look like somebody that you know.
Hmm.
Uh, so I've had experiences with those. I should probably, I guess, preface this with that, as with any culture, we have our ways of dealing with things, or responding to things, I think is a better way to put it. Because I think when you say dealing with things, it's almost like feeding into the mentality that it's always a problem. It's not
Right.
always a problem, but it's always
No.
something you have to respond to, you
Right.
know. So, yeah, correct myself there. As a drinking horn maker, it actually comes within my skill set, though, to have certain traditional methods of magic for responding to paranormal or supernatural events.
Mhm.
So, when I'm dealing with a mimic, um, I have drinking horns that I can call on. I'll ask my drinking horns for help, and then they wake up. Um, Like this one, for example, this one is my daughter's drinking horn. This is one I've made for her.
Mhm.
Uh, so it has runes on it that will help to ward off bad spirits or ward off evil spirits.
Mhm.
If I experience something like a mimic that's trying to lure me away, then I will call on this drinking horn and the spirit in this drinking horn, and she wakes up, and she's very protective.
That's incredible. So what got you started making these? I mean, what give me an idea and explain to me how did you get involved with this and what type of animals are you using and how do you get the horns and connect the dots for me how this whole process works?
I actually really love it when people ask me that question because of the fact that I don't know. As in,
Okay.
like, yeah, years ago, I think maybe 7 or 8 years ago, it's a haze. It's like I just sort of woke up one day and I had been making drinking horns, and I just sort of, it's like I woke up and I just knew how to make them,
Okay.
and yeah, I just instinctively knew how to make them. And I've been making them ever since. So I feel very strongly like the gods just said, "We want you to make drinking horns." Boom. Because I was in a haze for I don't even know how long, days, weeks, months, I don't know. But I come out of it making drinking horns, and I've never stopped.
How old were you when you started?
Let's see. Well, I'm 33 now, and it was 8 years ago. So 25, 20,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
25.
Okay. And where were you living when this happened?
Um, Here in the US,
Okay.
Wilsonville, Wilsonville, Oregon.
Nice.
Yeah,
That's awesome. That's awesome.
that's a that right there is a paranormal experience in and of itself because,
Yeah. Really?
uh, yeah, do you know the Dimash State Hospital and the history there?
I don't. I don't.
So there used to be this mental asylum
Okay.
in that area in Wilsonville where now they have apartment buildings.
Okay.
That was the Dimash State Hospital.
Okay.
And that whole area is known to be haunted.
Okay.
There's a lot of very intense activity in the area. Um, According to what I've been told, the Damas State Hospital had been severely abusive to its
Mm.
mental patients.
Okay.
And there were fires, if I recall, there were some fires that had burned the buildings down. I believe some of the patients perished in the
Mhm.
fires, but there's a lot of pain and a lot of agony and a lot of mental distress in that area. I don't know for certain whether or not the apartment building that I specifically lived in was part of the original complex, but it's maybe a 5-minute walk from where the original buildings were.
Gotcha.
And
So very close.
yeah. And I remember just, I lived in that apartment for a few years. And I remember that there would just be times where I would just feel insane. I would just start to feel crazy. I would just start to feel like my mind was being messed with,
Mhm.
or yeah, it would just come out of nowhere. There have been reports in that area of sightings of people that disappear, people
Oh,
that just disappear.
wow.
Um, yeah, and if you're a very, very empathic person, then you can feel a lot of the anguish.
Hmm, I
Yeah,
bet.
there's a lot of anguish in the area.
Yeah. It's interesting to me how much energy imprints, just like a fingerprint on a coffee cup, or leaving lipstick on a cup. It's like energy stays all over the place. It's fascinating to me how much energy is so powerful just from people's having a conversation somewhere or having an experience somewhere. There's energy all over the place. So let's go back for just a second and let's talk about um, what your introduction to the paranormal was. Kind of not really an introduction, it was kind of just the way things started. So share with everybody for just a second what you shared with me before we started about your introduction to the paranormal was not traditional from what most people go through.
Yeah, so I don't really know what my first paranormal experience was because I've had them my whole life. But one thing that I can remember from really early on is, and just to be clear, I don't belong to a standard religion, you know. I am a pagan, but yet when I was really little, I used to see apparitions of the prophets. I used to see I used to see Buddha. I used to see Jesus. I used to see Abraham, Muhammad, and I saw other people too that I didn't recognize. But I used to just see them, and at that point in my life, I was so little. I hadn't been exposed to images of them. I hadn't been
Right.
shown like visuals of them. It's just that when I saw them, I just innately knew who they were. A funny side note is that Jesus never appeared to me as a long-haired white guy, ever, ever. That
Yeah.
confused me so much. When I got older, I was like, wait, why do they show him as a long-haired white guy? I've
Right.
seen him. He appeared
Hmm.
to me. But I would
It
just,
is pretty
and
funny, I'd agree.
yeah. And you know what else is I didn't understand why nobody else saw them. Like I would, talk to my mom, I would say, look, it's Buddha.
Hmm.
Um, she would look so confused, and I didn't understand why she couldn't see them.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, because to me they appeared just as much as you appear, or as somebody else standing next to me might appear.
Right.
There was no difference, but
Yeah.
I could see them.
Yeah. And as a child, like you said, you don't know the difference, you just see them. They're there. So you have no reason to deny them and you have nothing to compare it with. So whatever they're doing or saying in front of you, that's all you understand. That's all you know. It
Yeah,
becomes natural. It's part of your natural day-to-day experience.
and also when you're a child, you have no biases.
Correct.
Your mind is completely open, so you take things as you see them.
Right.
So like if you see a person there, then that's a person that you're seeing there. It's
Right.
that simple.
Right.
And it only gets confusing when you notice that the other people don't see that person that is right there.
Yeah.
And yeah, and
It's
I
it's
had all
different.
I had all of the mental tests done, because my mom started, taking me to counseling and therapy and things like that, and they never identified any psychological conditions that would explain why I was seeing people that they couldn't see.
Right. So that's
So
that's good. I understand that. I was very fortunate. I have grandparents that were psychic as well, and my mom was a little bit psychic also. And so I was very lucky because when I started telling my mom that I saw things, she didn't tell me, "No, you didn't." She would say, "Okay, who is it? Who are you seeing?" which was not the typical experience. Not everybody had that opportunity. But at the same hand, she also said, you can talk about that here in the kitchen, but as soon as we leave the house, zip it up. Don't say that in front of other people. And all she would tell me is they won't understand. And
Yeah.
so I had that advantage, which was wonderful. So I was very fortunate. So can you think of a time when you were really surprised by something paranormal, something that really stood out in your mind and you kind of went, that's really different?
Yeah, actually, there's one. I remember one night when we were driving home really late. I think we were visiting my grandparents' house or something.
Mhm.
Uh, I don't know. I still don't really know exactly what was going on with this. But I would say that it was probably a shamanic vision. But one night we came home and I would always look at the stars. Every time that we came home late, I would always take a moment to look at the stars. And I was perfectly awake. I wasn't, delirious or anything like that.
Right.
And I was just a kid. I didn't have any weird substances or anything like that. And
Sure.
I just looked at the sky and my eyes fell dead on this star that was in the exact center of the sky, and then all the other stars had somehow formed into this really complex spiral that spanned all across the whole sky,
Wow.
just covered in
Okay.
this. And it was so real to me that I remember, going and looking in books about astronomy and things like that, trying to figure out what the heck I was just seeing. Like,
Right.
how can I be seeing the stars in a spiral just out of nowhere like that?
Yeah, because that's not an everyday occurrence. That's not something you see every day. So did you ever figure out what it was? Did you find a shape to resemble it to give you some answers?
No, but
No?
it's still very vivid and very clear in my mind. It was a
How
very vivid and very bright spiral that just took up the whole sky.
Okay, so what did you feel when you saw it? What was your first reaction to it?
Curiosity,
Okay. Okay.
wonder. Yeah,
Okay. Well, I'm sure you'll get an answer one of these days, but I think it's great that you observed it, and I'm sure it means something, but it'll be interesting to see what you discover from that because it'll come to you. I believe
it,
that. I believe that. So I want to talk about what you do these days. Now, drinking horns have become an everyday thing for you. This is basically your career. Is that a fair thing to say?
it is.
Okay.
It is
Okay.
my way of life. Yeah.
Okay. And you have these horns in different sizes. Can you talk about what sizes you have and give us some examples?
Yeah. So uh, give me a second. I apologize.
No, it's okay.
This is a miniature one. This is like maybe an eight
Okay.
ounce drinking. One. And
Okay.
I make them smaller than this even. Like I can make a 4 ounce one. And I've also made ones that were really tiny, like that tiny
Like
that
a
I made
shot glass size?
like a small enough for the fairies.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, I've made like little 1 inch drinking horns that you can
Nice.
wear around your neck.
Nice.
Um, this is an 8 ounce one right here with an Ansu's rune on it,
Okay.
and then this one right here that I'm drinking from. This is a 24 ounce with a
Okay.
stand, and this one's actually my daughter's.
Right.
Um, so there's a little bit of a cool story there. When I get to go down and have visitation with my daughter once a month in person, and something just told me that I needed to bring this drinking horn with me. And I don't question when I get those senses.
Right.
So okay, and I took it with me. And then with the way my mind works, the second that I see my child, I don't think of anything else. Like the
Right.
drinking that's under my arm, for example.
Sure.
I just go, give me my baby.
Yeah,
And
right.
when I got to see her, I ran up to her and I grabbed her up and I hold my daughter, and she sees this drinking horn under my arm, and she just immediately grabbed onto it, and
Yeah.
she said, "Mine."
Nice.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
That's really
So
cool. Right.
I decided that I will keep it for her, and then when she's old enough for me to pass it on to her, I will pass it on to her.
That's really cool. So, what are some of the other sizes? You showed us a giant one and a very small one.
So
Okay.
this is a 40 ounce right here, and
Okay.
this is not even the biggest that I've made. I don't have it with me right now because I'm
Okay.
away from home.
Okay.
But I have a 120 ounce drinking horn.
Oh, good grief. Wow.
Yeah, I have a 120 ounce drinking horn that's this big, and it's black, naturally black, and
Mhm.
it's engraved with gold artwork all over it.
That sounds awesome. Well, and I
Thank you.
noticed that you have different carvings on them, and I was actually thinking I ordered some from you recently that I'm gonna give out to some of my family as presents because it occurred to me when I was looking at your horns recently that that's a a statement that I grew up hearing at family gatherings whenever we'd have, Thanksgiving or Christmas. There was always a toast, and we'd say, "Drink to your health,"
Yep.
right? And so I love that Socrates, way back when in history, said that food is medicine. Well, drinking is a medicine to me too. If whatever we put in our bodies has a lot to do with how we live. What
Yes.
we invest in our bodies is very important. And so when you talk to me a little bit about the connection that you have with the horns and the spirituality factor in them, it really got my brain going, and I was thinking, "Oh, wow." I mean, this is not a gift that you just grab at the department store. This is something that's super meaningful. And so I thought, for people that I love, I would love to give them these horns and say to drink to your health, and this is actually a blessing to give to them, you
Yeah.
know? They remember me when they drink out of it, but they know that I love them, and that's why I gave them this horn. So
Well,
I think they're amazing. I love them, and I've seen all different colors, and you have all different sizes, and so I've got on the bottom here, just I'm gonna mention this a couple of times so that people know it. So in May, on a Saturday, we have what's called a Beltane Moon Bazaar. It's from 10 AM to 6 PM, and this is for 2025 at the DoubleTree at the Hilton in Portland. And this is a wonderful metaphysical type bazaar. There's all kinds of crafters, there's live music, there's food. It's a wonderful event for the day. We've got a parking garage that you can use. The parking is $3. It's amazing. And the entrance, I think is $10 for adults, but kids are free. Um, and we're both going to be there. I'll be there with my podcast, and the horns will be there with Hraefnar, and this will be a wonderful place. If you want to connect with us, I'd love to see everybody there. But I want to hear some more about things that have to do with how the horns work and talk about the runes a little bit. For people that aren't familiar with the runes, I want you to explain the symbology a little bit and why you have certain runes on certain horns and tell me what that's about. Can you do that?
I can do that. So first off, a good start would actually be my maker's mark.
Okay.
I don't know how well you can see this,
Yeah, that's really clear. Okay.
and I'm gonna flip my camera really quick,
Okay.
or I'm gonna see if I can flip it.
Okay, sure.
Am I able to flip it? Let's see if it has the option. I'm not used to this platform, so I
That's
don't
okay.
know how to do all the things.
That's okay. It was very clear when you held it up to the camera, so it should work.
Okay. Um, yeah, I don't need to flip it. That's fine.
Okay.
But so my maker's mark is actually four runes technically, but
Okay.
Ansus is the first one, then Lavus, but the
Okay.
lagu is found with the naudes, which is why you have the little slash
Okay.
going right at the bottom,
Okay.
and then urus.
Okay.
So those three runes, Ansus, Lagus, Urus, are known as the Ölruner or the Ale runes, and but they spell the word Alu. Um, so the word Alu, it means ale in the sense that that's where the word ale comes from.
Okay.
And it was used to refer to alcohol,
Mhm.
whether it be ale, mead, beer, whatever, in
Sure.
Proto-Germanic. But the word is also a sacred word. It
Okay.
was inscribed on things like brackets and headstones and things like that in order to invoke protection or
Okay.
to hallow those things, because there's seen as being an interconnection between alcohol and sorcery or magic.
Okay.
So the ale runes are used to ward off evil.
Okay.
Um, in in our Eddas, which for anyone who's new to Norse culture, the Eddas are like traditional poems that were passed down orally before they were written down. But these Eddas are kind of sacred to us, and they contain a lot of our myths and legends. There's an Edda called Sigurdrifumal, the wisdom sayings of the Valkyrie Sigurdrifa, where she's teaching the warrior Sigurdur about the use of runes for magic and for various purposes. And in stanzas 7 through 9, she tells him, you should learn the ale runes and the rune know these, and that you should inscribe the rune know these on your nails, or you should put it on your nails whenever you drink so as to ward off evil. And you should, um, she basically implies that you should put the ale runes on your drinking vessel when you drink so as to ward off sorcery and poison.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's incredible. So you actually have done something most people don't do, which is some storytelling. And I have heard you sing, I have heard you tell stories, and you do some really amazing stuff that I just absolutely love. So I want you to share with everybody a little bit about the storytelling that you did at Christmas time. So
Ooh.
let's talk about that a little bit.
Okay. I am so yeah. I do tell stories. I tell Old Norse stories,
Mhm.
but I tell them with a purpose.
Right.
Um, so, for example, one of my favorite stories to tell is the story of when Thor's hammer was stolen.
Mhm.
And I love telling that story because Norse culture is very heavily stolen and twisted by
Yes.
hateful people,
Yeah.
people that are racist, that are transphobic, homophobic, chauvinistic. And so I love to tell that story because it blows their garbage
Mhm.
right out of the can.
Right.
So I love to tell that story, because in that story, Thor cross dresses,
Mhm.
and there's a reason why he had to go through that. He kind of represents toxic masculinity at the
Mhm.
beginning of that story,
Right.
but at the end of that story, he represents being humbled
Yes.
as a male. Um, I'm not going to tell the whole story because there are
No,
a
no,
lot.
no.
Yeah.
But I just wanted people to know some of the other things that you do that are amazing. So, talk about the singing that you do for a second.
I do what's called Galdr. In Old Norse, Galdr it's a word that refers to traditional incantation, and it is often done in the form of throat singing,
Okay.
which surprises people. Most of the time when you think of throat singing, you think of Tibetan Buddhist monks or
Right.
uh, Mongolians or whatever. It's not very well known that throat singing was part of our culture as well.
Right.
But Galdr is often done in the form of a type of throat singing. I do traditional Old Norse incantations and also Old Saxon incantations. The Merseburg charms. I love to do those in the form of Galdr. Um, Galdr is also used for magic. That's kind of its main purpose, actually. In Norse poetic traditions, you have different poetic meters that are
Hmm.
used for different types of poetry. And there's a poetic meter that is specifically used for spells or incantations that is called Galdralag.
Hmm.
That literally a lay of Galdr. So that is what I do. It's a type of incantation that's used traditionally for spell work.
So you actually speak some different languages as far as more more I'm going to say native Old English. Does that sound like a fair way to describe it? How would you just tell me about the languages that you've spoken?
I have mainly studied Old Norse and Old Saxon, and Old Saxon is older than Old English. As languages evolve, you have different stages, right?
Mhm.
Old Saxon is the native language spoken by the Saxon Germanic tribe,
Mhm.
um, and it is a dialect of Old High German, and it is also a precursor or parent language to Old English, and um, kind of like a grandparent to modern English, I guess.
Right. Right.
So yeah,
That's awesome.
thank
Um,
you.
yeah. So you have done several things with shamanic influence to a lot of what you're doing, and you have had, it sounds like, experiences your entire life that had to do with this. So I am similar to you in the sense that I've had exposure to different faiths and different exposure to different saints throughout my life. And to me, I feel like religion is more to me about love than anything else. I feel like that's the thread that connects all of it for me, is that it's about love and respect and honor. And so I know that there's people that are curious about a lot of things to do with everything to do with religion, and I'm not going to get into that, but I want to specifically talk a little bit about um, how the horns actually connect with you, because you made a comment at the beginning about this, about being connected to the first horn. But can you actually, to me, it made sense totally, because I feel like whatever it is that you're doing with the horns, when you're taking care of them, it's very personal, and you do it with a lot of honor and a lot of respect. And you explained something to me about the soul of the animal is in the horn. There's a connection there. And so when you work with them, you're connecting with that spirit and it's staying with you, basically, is what I'm understanding. Does that sound right? Am I explaining that right?
Yeah, it does. So, if you're a shaman, I'm not trying to be one of those people who puts all shamans into a specific box, because it's different from culture to culture.
Right,
But
right.
in general, though, if you're a shaman, then you have certain senses that are higher, right?
Mhm.
For me, with how my intuition works, I'm very, very strongly sensitive to touch. I'm very strong when it comes to tactile contact.
Sure.
So, this is a very tactile craft. This horn, it had a husk on it when it was a raw horn. And then, as I work on it, I sand it off. And I am at that point quite literally the first living being that will see these layers underneath that husk.
Okay.
And so it's intimate.
Right.
For there's an intimacy that develops.
Okay.
Two is that I'm touching it very closely, and so as I'm touching it and I'm getting to know it, I feel the energy from the horn and from the soul of the horn. I
Right.
actually feel it flow through me like lightning, like thunder. I
Okay.
feel I actually feel it flow through me, and then there's an exchange between my energy and the energy of the horn as I'm working with it. You know, I feel like I actually become part of the horn, and there's a sort of oneness that happens between me and the animal spirit, and I often get the animal's emotions.
Yeah.
Um, I get flashes of the animal's memories, even. Um, there have been a few times where I've actually put a horn down and chosen not to work on it because I've gotten flashes of memories of abuse.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I get
yeah.
that.
It actually becomes very emotional for me,
Sure.
because I'll feel their pain. They'll talk to me. They will tell me what they didn't get to tell anybody else.
Gotcha.
It should be noted that the animal does not have to die for the horns to be made. So this is not implying that all of these animals are dead.
Correct.
But, it is common practice by ranchers to dehorn them,
Right.
and most of the horns that I get, they don't communicate memories of abuse. But there are a few that come through, and when I get them, I get flashes of them being abused, and um, I have to nurture those ones.
Right.
I take them and I work with them on healing, and those ones are not to be crafted. They're not to be crafted.
And just to be clear, I want people to understand too. So the material that you're getting is not something that's full of veins and muscles and joints per se. It's something that's an exterior part of an animal, kind of like a hoof. And
Yeah,
so it's not like, I'm glad you brought that up. I'm really glad you brought that up because there's a lot of people that are vegans that would go, because they're thinking about it in a different term. It's not like that. And there are,
yeah,
for example, there's several um, lambs and goats that actually have ailments. If their horns don't get removed soon enough, they can grow into their heads and harm them. So the
exactly.
removing part of the horn is not detrimental for the most part. Um, Oftentimes there's medical reasons to take them out or to trim them. They do grow. They regrow. It's an amazing thing that they are, and they're useful to the animals for different things. They use them in rutting, they use them in mating, they use them for protection, for territorial things. They're a big part of their lives. But again, there's several reasons why the horns would either that fall off, like elk or deer, um, but they're different. There's different things that happen with these horns. So I'm really glad that you're doing something with them. And to me, I would rather drink out of something like that than plastic or glass. And I say that partly because I'm klutzy and my husband is blind. And so we don't use glass in our house much because it's just a better idea for us not to. And I'd rather get away from plastic. I just feel like this is a better alternative. And so
It's
how long do the horns last? I mean, as far as I know, they don't rot. They don't disintegrate. Is that correct?
That is correct. They don't rot or just well, oh they can.
Of course.
That has to do with how you care for them.
Correct.
You know, it's not really that hard though to avoid. What I tell people is all you have to do is just make sure that you rinse and dry them thoroughly enough, because that's what will cause the rot is moisture. So if you just keep them stored in a cool, dry place, and after each use, just make sure that you dry them thoroughly enough. Maybe
Right.
even got some cloth on the inside to
Right.
absorb moisture, it should be fine. The outside, I always seal. I actually use an eco-friendly, non-toxic shellac
Nice.
as a seal, so that protects the outside from moisture. And if people want to, I do, and I do charge extra for this just because it costs me extra.
Mhm.
Um, but I can seal the inside with beeswax.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great.
Some people are allergic to honey, though. Some people are
Right.
allergic to beeswax, so I don't always do that.
Right.
But that also can help them last longer.
Right.
But
That makes sense.
I've been doing this for 7 or 8 years,
Mhm.
and I've never heard any of my customers come back and tell me that their drinking wars haven't lasted.
That's amazing. Well, and
Thank you.
I can see why they would last. I mean, they're made out of a very sturdy material. It makes sense to me,
Yeah,
for sure, for sure. So, what other kinds of things have you etched on the front of them? I've seen pictures and, the runes, and have you ever put someone's name on them before? Is that something that if someone asked you, you could do that?
I have.
Yeah?
I have. I tell people that I will engrave whatever they ask within reason. And by that I mean, like, if somebody were to ask me to put something big in it, then I would be like, no, sorry, go make your own
Right,
horn, you
right.
know. But like other than that, as long as it's nothing hateful, I will engrave just about anything. I had a neighbor years ago who asked me to do a bust of Clint Eastwood.
Oh, really?
Um,
Oh my
yeah,
goodness.
yeah.
Wow.
Um, Actually, yeah, that actually was a bit of a supernatural experience too, by the way.
Really? What happened?
She passed away.
Oh.
Um, so at that time, she was living down the hall from me
Mhm.
in that apartment where used to be the Dimash State Hospital.
Oh, yeah, okay.
She had a son, and I didn't know this necessarily, but she hadn't been able to get him a birthday gift for many years.
Okay.
And so finally, she was able to get him a gift, and it was that drinking horn that
Okay.
she needed to make. And I had never even drawn Clint Eastwood. Like
Mhm.
I'm not even American, you know.
Right,
That's
right.
uh, but I did it, and it came out really nice. But she went in the hospital,
Oh,
and
wow.
yeah, then she passed away in the hospital. Um, and I had gotten the drinking horn to her
Mhm,
before she was taken into the hospital, so she
mhm,
had the drinking horn. But um, one day, my roommate and I were walking past her apartment, and
mhm,
this young guy and this lady, they were cleaning out the apartment. And
mhm.
so we stopped to ask them how they were doing because the guy seemed like he was really, really broken down. He
Of
seemed like
course.
yeah. And I just put two and two together. I was like, okay, that's probably her son.
Right.
Uh, Something's wrong. So I stopped to ask him if he was okay. And
Mhm.
he told me that his mom had passed away.
Right.
But when she was in the hospital, she knew she was going to die. Like he told me that she actually knew that it was her time.
Mhm.
Um, and so she had actually sent his sister to go and secure the horns to make sure that they got to him because she knew she wasn't going to make it out of there alive to be able to
Wow.
give them to him. So he he hugged me, and he was in tears, and he said, I'm really grateful because this is the first time in years that my mother has even been able to get me a gift, and you have no idea how much this means to me
Wow. That's
spiritually.
incredible.
Yeah. the thing is that I don't remember anyone telling me that she had passed away, but I already knew.
Yeah.
Like the horn had told me that she had passed
Interesting.
away. Yeah. So when I walked past that room and I saw him crying, I just knew
It
okay,
made
that
sense. Yeah.
yeah,
Well, that's really amazing that you were able to do that for them because that's a connection that's gonna stay with him the rest of his life, I'm sure.
yeah. It's also when you're a crafts person, it doesn't matter what craft it is. When you're a crafts person or when you're an artist, you have no idea how you can wind up becoming a part of somebody's story. You
That's
know,
right.
because for me, that just started out as a run of the mill commission,
Right.
just a really fun thing that I love doing. I had no clue that I was gonna become the person that manifested for somebody else their dying gift to their child.
Right.
Yeah. So
That's pretty
I do,
overwhelming. Yeah.
it is. I do a lot of different kinds of artwork. I have a drinking horn right now that I'm raffling.
Mhm.
Um, this one,
Mhm.
uh, it has, it actually has a Eurasian cave lion
Okay.
engraved on in a silhouette.
Okay. And
I
what's
don't
that
know
on the
how.
bottom? Yeah, I see that on the top. That's amazing.
And then below it is the Old Norse, a compound of the Old Norse words Helir and Kotor. Helir means cave,
Okay.
and Kotor means cat or lion in this case.
Okay.
And then below it, there's I took a little bit of artistic freedom with this,
Sure.
but there is a figurine that's thousands of years old
Mhm.
that they found in an ancient Germanic cave,
Okay.
and it's a figurine of a lion-headed priest.
Wow.
And so they know that the Eurasian cave lion was significant to our ancestors, and the Eurasian cave lion was killed off by the Romans. They were
Interesting.
driven to extinction
Wow.
for gladiatorial entertainment.
Oh, right. I think I have heard of that before. That's incredible. That's
Yeah.
incredible. Wow.
And so I was just really feeling the grief for the loss of this animal.
Mhm.
I can feel it from the spirits of my ancestors.
Right.
So I made this drinking horn to honor the Eurasian cave lion, and I'm raffling it, and I'm going to donate 100% of the proceeds from the raffle to the World Wildlife Fund to help other animal species not go extinct.
That's great. So how can somebody get a raffle ticket for that?
I don't yet have a proper like e-ticket thing set up yet because I don't
Okay.
know how to do it just yet.
Okay.
But I have an app on my phone where you can enter in names, you can enter
Okay.
in entries, and then it'll like automatically spin them and make a selection.
Okay, so if somebody
Um,
sent you a message on Facebook or on Instagram, maybe they could sign up to raffle that way perhaps? Is that a possibility?
yeah,
Okay.
and
Okay.
I've been taking raffle entries just by PayPal or Cash App or whatever, and
Okay.
it is $3 per entry, and you can
Okay.
buy up to a maximum of 21 entries. I
Okay.
just did that to try and keep things fair for people,
Sure.
but
Of course.
yeah,
That sounds great.
thank
That's a
you.
great idea. I like that. That's awesome. So what are you most curious about these days? What are you working on or looking towards? Is there anything you're researching? What are you working on these days?
A lot. I have a Patreon page where, I am working on teaching people more about drinking horns and the craft. But on top of that, I'm also using it as a platform to educate people about mythology
Mhm.
Norse mythology, the history, the beliefs, because there's a lot of ignorance
Yes.
about us. There's a lot that people don't know. And also Germanic mythology, Proto-Indo-European mythology, and things like that.
Mhm.
And so I do a lot of academic research for those things.
Mhm.
Um, I also use that as a means to help other people. So, for example, I donate from because with Patreon you can have paid subscriptions,
Mhm.
and I'm using the paid subscriptions to fund my monthly donations to help feed starving people in other countries.
Nice.
So yeah, so that way, I'm doing it with I'm doing it in a way that helps make the world a better place.
You're
Um,
investing in the world, so that's great.
yeah,
That's awesome.
when I first started my business, Mimyrs well is the name of my business. When I first started it, I wanted to think of my business as like a wishing well.
Mhm.
That if people put something into it, that they would be blessed by it.
Mhm.
That was my original intent. I wanted to do it so that I can empower myself and empower other people to help others. It wasn't originally for profit. So,
Right.
I'll tell people like, yeah, it does pay my bills. But above and beyond that, the real point was to help other people.
That's awesome. I
Thank
love that.
you.
So, what are you most proud of in the work that you've done so far?
Ooh, um, the joy, the joy that people get when they get my drinking horns.
Mhm.
I'm really proud of that. Sometimes when people get my drinking horns, they do unboxing videos, and getting to see how happy people are
Mhm.
to receive my drinking horns, it lifts my heart up into it sends my heart up into Valhalla.
Yeah.
It makes
Yeah. That's amazing. There's something incredible about investing your time and your energy and your heart into something and having it get received that way.
yeah,
It's not just an object, it's not just a cup, it's something far past that, and I think that your response to it emotionally makes a lot of sense to me because it is a passion project for you. It's not just a hobby, it's not just a cup for people to drink beer out of. This is a drinking horn that has spiritual significance, and it's cool. Let's just say it, it's cool. They're very cool looking, they have wonderful colors and shapes, and, the Norse stuff is it's quite a trend to be involved into Norse culture at this time with all the Viking shows and all that, and I love that you're trying to dispel the myths and get back to the reality of what the history actually was, and so getting more education out into the public about what they really are and what it means is important, and I think that the whole thing for you is a passion project, the education part and the drinking horn part. So,
it is. It is something that I love doing so much. I see drinking horns as vessels. I mean,
right.
they are literally
Yeah.
they are vessels, but they're also vessels of our cultural wisdom.
Yes.
One thing that I love telling people so much is, because people will often ask me, like, are you allowed to drink non-alcohol out of them? And I will tell them, yeah, in fact, the most important drinking horn in all of Norse mythology was used by Odin to drink water from the
Mhm.
well of
Yeah.
water. Yeah. I've also done a lot to try and I mean, alcohol should be to a reasonable degree associated with drinking horns,
Right.
but alcoholism, on the other hand, shouldn't. Odin spoke out against alcoholism
Right.
multiple times in the Eddas,
Right.
flat out spoke out against drunkenness. And that stereotype of the drunken, and excuse my language, the shit-faced Viking, you
Right.
know, the stereotype of the drunken shit-faced Norseman that just
Mhm.
gets blacked out honking goes berserk is hugely damaging.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's not accurate for one. It's someone's interpretation of what they think happened in history. And I get that. Everybody has their own ideas about what they think happened in the past. So, what else would you like someone to know about horns before we close out tonight? What is something that you think would be important for people to know about the horns?
Important to know.
They're each one of a kind, I know that.
Well, it should be known that as long as you can respect the culture, you don't have to be Norse pagan to have these.
Right,
They are open to anyone
right.
as long as you can respect the culture they come from.
Yeah. That's good. That's awesome.
Thank
So,
you.
how can somebody for people that are listening, because I've got a few people that are gonna watch this video, but for people that are listening, can you please give it an email or spell out your name for us so that people can find you on Facebook or wherever you'd like to be contacted? Can you do that for me real quick?
Yeah. My email is uh, my email is MIMYRSWELL at gmail.com. So
Okay.
Mimyrs at gmail.com. My Facebook is just Mimyrs with apostrophe apostrophe S and Mimyrs. So Mimyrs Facebook page. Um, Same thing with my YouTube channel and my Patreon. But if you email me, then I can give you all of the links to all of my stuff. I have a YouTube podcast. Um, I have Facebook. I have my Patreon. I've got my TikTok account as well. So if people email me, then I can give them whatever links they want.
That's great. That's great. So, is this event in May, is that your next event, or are you doing any other projects at some bazaars elsewhere coming up? Where are you gonna be at?
Um, Right now, that's my next event, and I'm not just going to be selling drinking horns. I'm also going to be performing as well.
Okay.
So I'm going to be on the microphone as well.
Nice. That'll be great. That'll be
Yeah.
great. Doug will be glad to hear that. My husband does the entertainment scheduling, so he talks to him about that stuff too. So that's wonderful. Again, for those of you that didn't hear it the first time, Beltane Moon Bazaar, May 10th. It's a Saturday. It's in Portland at the Doubletree at Hilton, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., May 10th. Don't forget that one. Mark your calendar, set an intention to be there. It's a blast. It'll be fun. May 10th. Be there. It's the day before Mother's Day, you guys. And if you have a mom or you are a mom and you think you might like to get a special gift or something unusual that's just unique for you, this is the place to go. This is not Macy's. This is not Kmart or Walmart or Bimart or Kohl's. This is something very different. This is personally handmade things that are going to be there. And nothing wrong with those other stores. They're lovely, but personal gifts I think are a lot more endearing for me anyway. I like that personal touch. And what's some more fun than just goofing off for the day? Come out to Portland and check it out. You can get there by bus or train. You can drive, and like I said, you can park. There's a parking garage right next to where we're at, connected to the building. It's super easy to get into. And there's some wonderful restaurants right there. We're going to have a wonderful day, and I hope to see everybody there. Well, this is Holly saying thank you for showing up and thank you for joining us tonight. And there's the horn. I love the horn. He's toasting us. And we will see you soon and hope to see you at the event at Beltane in May. Thanks again, guys, for joining us. We'll see you soon.
Thank you so much.